Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning to all my colleagues, to distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of the Sunway University Board, may I bid a very warm welcome to all of you to this seminar series. I thought when I was brought into the Sunway University Board, I only attend 4 meetings a year. But apparently I also have to give 4 talks a year. But anyway, since the topic is not engineering, so I thought it is okay lah. I would have a problem if this talk is engineering, because then all of you may not want to stay throughout, you see. But because the topic is education, and education is such a fast developing, a lot of challenges to it and so on, so I think it is very interesting. But of course, before that, so I must bid Selamat Hari Raya, Maaf Zahir Batin to all of you as who have just celebrated Hari Raya, kan? And hopefully we'll have more Hari Raya in the future. We'll be even more happier than after we have heard the 3 speakers afterward, Now, I've been in the education sector for 33 years. Now I've gone slow. I just want to be members of boards and so on. But for the purpose of this talk today, and I think this is an extremely important topic, we want to talk about sustainability. Because I think in the past, we have been very active building universities, building institutions and so on. That is fine for the past. But going into the future, we must talk more and more about sustaining them. And normally under trying times, when the economic situation is not that great and so on, this is where the institutions are really tested. I brought to you today 3, well, including me, is 3 speakers. But the 2 speakers, as you can see from the slides here, Professor Sakina from MARACorp, and also Professor Hamzah, my colleague. Both are 2 persons that I know extremely well, and you'll be surprised I actually know even their family life and so on, but I won't touch on that. But I think both are actually very excellent and outstanding candidates, and you will see that from the talk today. The first speaker, Professor Sakina, was my staff in the Multimedia University who set up the Center for Modern Languages and Communication. And after I left, she continued to work hard, and the next time I met her, she was already president of a university. So she becoming that president has nothing to do with me. It is out of her own ability. And suddenly I found her 6 months ago already heading a very, very important task in MARA. So this is Prof. Sakina, a very super lady. Just sharing notes with her, she is in charge of about 342 institutions under the whole MARA group. She is responsible for transforming them. Her budget runs into the billions. So I think she's a very ideally suited person to talk to us about how she wants to transform the MARA education sector, which is a very big money spender, and how that sector can be transformed to be much more progressive, to be much more self-sustaining and so on, and to give quality education and so on. So this is what we want to hear from her. So she's well suited to talk about this, because under her arms, thousands of people are working in there, and not only that, billions of dollars of our money is being managed there. The second speaker is Prof. Hamzah. It is interesting that when we first started working in the Institute of Malaya many years ago, he was among the first person I met. Not long after that, he became my dean, became my deputy. He was deputy in several positions, actually. Deputy Vice Chancellor. And in the last 4 years, I think, she has gone on to this job to run the International University of Malaya Wales, which was created when I was the Vice Chancellor. This is a marriage between two public institutions in Malaysia and in Wales. Okay, a private university owned by these two public institutions in Malaysia. So this is a very interesting model. I've been the board member all this while. So I want to watch what he wants to say today, whether he wants to tell you the whole truth or not. But there are a lot of interesting things that Prof. Hamzah can share. How, under very, very difficult circumstances, he has been able to push things along. I will just summarize it like this, how I felt about the job. Very often when I saw how he was grilled in the board meeting, I told him, Hamzah, if I were you, I would have resigned a long time ago. But he is the most patient, most durable person I've ever seen, you know. So, you know, I'll be happy for God to send him to paradise, you know, because I cannot be as patient as him. But I think that experience has been the climax of his career, and I think it will take him further than what he has been before. So I think with this speaker, Prof. Hamzah and Prof. Sakina, I think they will go much higher than this. So at this point of time, I suppose it's good to hear from them what they have to say. So with that, further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker. You are given 1 hour, about 45 minutes speaking time and 15 minutes question time. You must give them time to question you, please. Sakina, please.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. First and foremost, thank you, Tan Sri, for the introduction. And also, I have to say, you know, lucky thing you didn't mention about the family life. Yeah, he does know me from, I think, the beginning of my career. And I've worked under him for quite a bit of time. And I have to say, you know, somebody asked me how a lady kind of go through the glass ceiling. And one of the factor that I've been, I think, successful was because I was under him. So, you know, somebody asked me how to be successful. I said, you know, work under Transi. And I think you get some kind of leadways on, you know, especially in the scene of education. I've been asked today to actually talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is the transformation of higher education in the current condition, the world that we face today. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, there is no other time to look at transformation of higher education rather than the time is now, especially in the challenges that we face in today's world. And the slides after this, the presentation, is the why. Because I always believe in when you want to do something, you have to understand the reasons and the why behind whatever that you're going to do. And we think that, you know, transformation is key in higher education right now. So we got to rethink the higher education model. As we know, that higher education, there is always a need. We in this room, hopefully most of you represent the higher education industry, believes that there is a need for higher education. And we look at universities as a place to train the minds. But when you have actually leaders and country leaders that says that perhaps there is no need for higher education, there's no need for degree, that, you know, our young or youth go straight away to work and do OJT. So why do you need education? And here, I think that people in this room, we have to think about our relevancy of being in higher education in today's world. I'll explain some of the challenges that we are facing. And this actually gives you some of the foundation of currently how do you transform a higher education institution. Of course, the raising cost of higher education is key. And this is not only in other countries, but it is also in Malaysia. Namely, if you could see the actual, you know, per capita has changed. I have to see this. The average of the students' debt has become higher, and we know that some of our students who have taken PTPN loan are actually blacklisted also. So those are the issues that we're raising. And of course, the cost of not only the cost of higher education, there's also the challenge of perhaps questions employers or the industry been asking us, what are the competencies that students actually embrace in higher education, and whether it is relevant to the world that they go out to. So those are some of the challenges that we face. I think I'll show you this little video that explains a little bit about the education bubble.
The buyers think that what they're buying will appreciate in value, making them rich in the future. The product grows more and more elaborate and more expensive, but the expense is offset by cheap credit provided by sellers who are eager to encourage buyers to buy. Buyers see that everyone else is taking on mounds of debt, and they're more comfortable when they do so themselves. Besides, for a generation, the value of what they buy has gone up steadily. What could go wrong? Everything continues smoothly until, at some point, it doesn't anymore. Yes, this sounds like the housing bubble, but I'm afraid it's also sounding a lot like the still inflating higher education bubble. College is getting more expensive, a lot more expensive. At an annual growth rate of 7.4% a year, tuition has vastly outstripped the consumer price index of 3.8%. It's skyrocketed past spiraling healthcare increases of 5.8%. Even the housing bubble at its runaway peak pales in comparison. Now, consumers would balk, except that, as with the housing bubble, cheap and readily available credit has let people borrow huge amounts of money to finance education. And both students and parents continue to believe that whatever the cost, a college education is a necessary ticket to future prosperity. But is it? Well, meet Courtney Muna, a 26-year-old graduate of New York University, recently reported by the New York Times to have nearly $100,000 in student loan debt that her degree in religious and women's studies did not equip her with actual job skills to repay. Payments on Courtney's debt are about $700 per month, equivalent to a respectable house payment and a major bite on a monthly income of $2,300 as a photographer's assistant earning an hourly wage. And, unlike a bad mortgage on an underwater house, Courtney can't simply walk away from her student loans, which cannot be expunged in bankruptcy. She's stuck in a financial trap, and she's not alone. Even students who major in programs shown to increase earnings, like engineering, face limits on how much debt they can sanely amass, and with costs approaching $60,000 a year for many private schools and $30,000 for state schools, six-figure student loan debt is fast becoming the norm. For many, the debt is enough to quash marriage plans. Who wants to marry someone with huge amounts of unpayable debt? It's enough to prevent home ownership and generally wreak havoc on the debtors' lives. In fact, total student loan debt in America has passed the $1 trillion mark, more than total credit card debt and more than total auto loan debt. But as prices have been going up, learning seems to have been going down. A recent book, Academically Adrift by Richard Aram and Josipa Rosca, found that 45% of students did not demonstrate any significant improvement in learning during the first 2 years of college, and 36% of students did not demonstrate any significant improvement in learning over 4 years of college. The primary reason, according to the study, is that courses aren't very rigorous. In fact, a recent survey of more than 700 schools by the American Council of Trustees and Alumni found that many have virtually no requirements. Perhaps that's why students are studying 50% less than they were a couple of decades ago. And all of this is happening even as millions of people with college educations can't find jobs. Today, many graduates are already jumping the tracks to become skilled manual laborers, plumbers, electricians, and the like. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that 7 of the 10 fastest growing jobs in the next decade will be based on the job training rather than higher education. And there'll be hands-on jobs that are hard to outsource to foreigners. If you want your toilet fixed, it can't be done by somebody in Bangalore. People pursuing these careers will have greater job security in today's economy and will be free from the crushing debt amassed by the more educated few. Bubbles form when too many people expect values to go up forever. Simply put, the cost of higher education has far outpaced its actual value. The bubble is going to burst.
At the end of the day, we are saying that one of the biggest challenges that we've got is actually students paying for the university's education. There is of course this aspect that education should be free, and we'll go into that debate later in question and answer, because there is a big amount of debate on who pays actually for higher education. But I think even though the video is based in America, higher education institutions, Malaysia is not shy away from this issue too. All right. If you look at what the report of U21, it stated there that Malaysia is actually, number 12 in input for higher education, but actually 44 for output, for efficiency, and especially in expenditure. And we've been spending a lot of budgets and money in higher ed, actually. And it's even stated that we spend about 1% more than countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Japan. And knowing that these are the countries where the Ivy Leagues are. So expenditure keeps rising. Previously, 10 years ago, while in universities, we usually pass the cost to the student. Increase of cost, we increase the fees. But we know right now that's not the way to go, because students can't afford anymore. So what do you actually do? So these are some of the challenges that we face. And furthermore, there's challenges of PTP and other scholarship bodies also. Besides cost, there is also other challenges, and namely what we know as disruptive technologies. Firstly, there are many examples out there of disruptive technologies, like how the disruptive technologies are shaking and jolting the world of businesses. As you know, the largest taxi providers are not those taxi companies, but actually Uber. And you know that the hotel providers or the largest hotel provider is no longer the hotel chains, but actually Airbnb. So these are some of the disruptive technologies and models that we begin to see in the world out there, and this is going to be transferred also to higher education. The changing landscape of new knowledge changes very fast. So beware lecturers with 10 years of PowerPoint slides, the same thing in and out. You're not relevant anymore. Let me tell you that, because changes of knowledge keeps on going very fast. I think Prof mentioned that he is not able to deliver a speech in engineering right now. If we ask him to do so, that might be 10, 20 years ago. Things have changed so much more. I think even in advancement of technology, you buy the first Nokia handphone, I think, and the Nokia handphone lasts you about 3-4 years. But now every year there's always a change of new technologies and the new smartphones. I've got iPhone 6 and iPhone 7 is coming out, and now we hear that iPhone 8 is coming out. So the changes in advancement comes very fast right now. Now the estimate potential economic impact of technologies in mobile internet, and hence the reason why I did mobile learning for my PhD. Simply because I know this is going to be the disruptor that's going to look at, especially not only in businesses, but also in higher education. The automation of knowledge work, the Internet of Things, cloud, and advanced robotics are some of the technologies that's coming into our forces. And are these at the brink of our higher education? And the answer is yes. In higher education, we begin to experience this impact, and namely in two ways. One, of course, in the alternative education provider and the likes of MOOCs. There are a lot of MOOCs out there internationally, and even Malaysia, we have our own Malaysia MOOC that is established right now by the public universities. The second part of how disruptive technologies are facing in higher education is the immersiveness of this technology. Like, for example, you've got actually now provide us with in-demand skills. General Assembly is an example. They say, don't need to go to universities. Come to them, do an online course, and in 3 months, accelerate, you'll get actually a job. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing in higher education. Apart from that, if you look at how higher education is actually managed, and we compare it in today's world, in the 20th century, when we went into universities, or when I went to universities, I look at brochures, catalogs, to find out where's the best place to study. But right now, most of our students actually went to the social media to select where's the best place to study. And these are some of the changes that we see. They go into LinkedIn to look at ranking and also to look at data analysis. If I were to take an engineering course in Sunway, where would I end up in? And the data is there. You could also look at the students' experience. Previously, come into a lecture and you get in the transfer of knowledge. But right now, the demand is much greater. Students expect that you have a platform of e-learning in any of our institutions, and that is an expectation. It's no longer a service that we provide in higher ed. And sometimes right now we look at different models of how we actually offer degrees. Previously, walked into a university, you can get a 4-year degree or a 3-year degree, get out, and you'll be job ready. There'll be jobs for you. But right now, there are things like stackable, modular courses that you can actually do this when you are working and work on the weekend, or also, do part bits and pieces as in bite-sized learning. So there are a lot more models that are actually out there in order to face the disruptive technology. Another challenge that we've got is actually the changing nature of employment. Our students ready for the job market? As we know, 65% of today's 12 years old would not have the jobs that are ready just yet. I'll give you an example. A few months ago, somebody called me and said, Doctor, would you want to brand yourself up? And say, excuse me, I am a personal brander. I say, a social media personal brander. I say, what's that? Apparently, what she does is actually help you in your digital footprint. And this is a job I've never heard before. And she was introducing this and what she does. She takes in about 500 ringgit to 1,000 ringgit on how you impact social media. And she has about 20 clients. I was calculating this. She's getting basically more than some of us. So, and I asked her, what's your background? Oh, she's actually a chemist graduate, and she couldn't find a job, and she loves the social media, and she says that's what she does. And I bet she doesn't pay a single cent of tax. Well, I didn't ask her that, but these are some of the jobs that are created. Not to mention things like personal shopper and stuff like that is going on. But are we basically ready to produce this kind of students or graduates in order to face the job market? Now, of course, we look at the different types of changing employment trends. And the impact cost on the rise of middle class, the young demographics, the rapid urbanization, and so on and so forth. And these are some of the trends that as universities we got to learn and got to understand. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get the students ready out there into the big bad world out there, and to face whatever challenges that they have. Even in new jobs in IoT of things, there are several. I am part of the APAC their team, which is looking at data scientist competencies. And there apparently a cry for data scientists, not only in Malaysia, but it's also around Asia Pacific region. And everybody has a different opinion of what is a data scientist and what data scientists actually do. So APAC was trying to get us together and trying to come up with competencies that are relevant so that we start producing data scientists out of, the corridors of our universities. So these are some of the challenging trends that we face. And the interesting thing about the APAC, their project, is that they want about 200,000 data scientists now. And we say, universities takes about 2.5, 3.5 years to produce. They say, can you try to produce some of these graduates as fast as possible? So we look at different types of trends of employment. And let me see. All right. I think at the end of the day, the challenge is what kind of skills do we actually embed into the courses of that we offer in the universities. And if you ask the industries, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of studies to say what kind of skills that they will require the students to have. And basically, trying to embed this within the content that we actually engage our students is not actually easy, because you have to look at the students' lifestyle cycle too. So one of the correlation that I found is actually critical thinking and communication. These are some of the needs of what is the expectation of graduates coming out of our door. So this is also talking about work, the skills that are needed into work environment, and I'm not going to go into that. Another matter that we are facing is, of course, the different types of students that we have in our universities right now. Now, we know that they are called, many things, digital learners, millennials, digital natives, net generation, I generation, Google generation, but they are basically the same, which means that they are synonymous with using digital devices, and they have that in their hand. Try to say, take a note, what they do, actually, they will take a picture. There's no note writing at all in my classes. But But when we look at the current higher education students right now amidst us, the digital traits that are quite common is actually they like to communicate. So communication, you notice, you'll get a WhatsApp message right in the middle of the night. They would want to communicate. Why? Because they want things that are immediate. I want things right now. They are really an impatient lot. They like things multimedia. So give them textbooks to read, they will not actually learn. Give them videos, give them podcasts, hopefully something get into their head. They like to create, very hands-on kind of group. They like to be active. They like things that are familiar. They like things that are convenient. Where's the nearest bus? Where's the nearest LRT? They want it in front of them. And these are the generations that they face. But one thing interesting about them is that they can multitask. I'm at awe of the type of things that our students can do multitasking. Like studying with music on, I can't. But they can. Or studying with watching the Korean movie, they can. I can't. So, these are some of the traits that we have with students right now. And there are lots of expectations. We have to also be aware in higher education the different types of pedagogy that we've got. Previously, lecture was the only in thing. I'm not saying lecture is not good. I'm saying that it's only one of the pedagogy. There are so many out there. So you look at the teaching and learning trends in higher education. Flipped classroom has become the in thing. 5 years ago, we've not heard of flipped classroom. And of course, things like PBL, problem-based learning, is one of the things that we've got to engage our lecturers to do in the higher education for engagement. Because it's no longer about delivery. It's about engagement. And the interesting thing is that most of our lecturers are not trained in this field. They are trained in whatever field they are, in being an academician, for example, in computer science, in maths, in history, but they are not trained to actually engage students. I'm not even saying teaching. I'm saying engage. And looking at trends is one of the important things in higher ed right now. We've got international students in the midst of our universities, and handling them is not as easy as we think it is. There's the idea of globalization. How is a subject globalized? That is something that we constantly need to actually ask ourselves. There are different models of programs. I think Jukebox is coming, where you can actually take credit away from your universities. You've got the exchange programs. You got the summer school concept, and these are some of the concepts that I think the higher education or Ministry of Higher Education has allowed us to do in the recent years. So these are some of the current scenarios. Very lengthy, but I think it's very necessary because we got to understand what we are facing out there in order for us to transform. So the change of landscape of knowledge, the democratic changes of students, the nature of employment, industry market changes, and cost is some of the issues that we as leaders in higher education really need to see. So what do we actually focus? To me, innovation is key in any kind of transformation. But, transformation is not creating something new. When I say the word innovation, the first thing that people would say is Apple. Innovation does not mean that you need to create. It's actually doing something you're good at. Just take focus and take up something that you're good at and focus on that. And to me, that's part of a university transformation. Now, rethinking of the higher education model, we've got a lot of literature out there. The Innovative University is a book that actually look at how universities can innovate. And the main message in the book is actually the need to focus on what is the core of the university and students being the primary focus. I think that's key. At the end of the day, a university is all about the students and the students' experience, regardless of anything that we do. So the path of transformation of higher education is not as different as in any organization. First, focus on the core. These are some of the steps that I would usually do in any transformation project that I have. Study the university, study the higher institutions, and just focus on the core. Secondly, look at its structural innovation. Structural innovation meaning look how you can do administration better. This is nothing sexy about it, nothing interesting about it, but that's the truth. Look at it carefully. The books will tell you. Even though I have a background in education, but Tan Sri has taught me to look at P&L very closely because the books will not lie. It will tell you where you are leaking and where you're in the red and where you can actually improve. Do innovation models. Think of how you can innovate better. And finally, as a university, you need to understand how you diverse income. Students' fee is not only your one single income. You have to look at the various income too, because as we know, we cannot sustain ourselves with only one type of income. So it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. So what's your core? Finding the core is actually looking at your background, focusing actually on what is true to you, what is true to an organization. And this is where you invest and more in time, in budget, in order to actually look at your income. So it can be a field of study. University is good in an area. It can be actually the student's experience. Whoever goes through my university will have an exchange program and focus on that. Or it can actually be the outcome. 95% of my graduates will get a job somewhere. So whatever it is, focus on this actual core. The next thing is, of course, this is where I say it's dry, but it is essential, which is actually looking at your administrative cost. There will be leakages. So look at fragmentation, look at redundancy, look at the hierarchy level. Sometimes a university has become so big that it is hierarchical, that there are middle managers somewhere that you actually do not need if you automate or if you actually centralize certain portions. Look at incentives also, and of course make it simple. A university with 23,000 students, like I'm looking at UniKL, it has become very complex. To the point that there are actually pockets of part of the university everywhere. We've got about, I think, 8 campuses around Malaysia, and it has become to the point where everybody is in silo. So look at it and carefully and try to make things as simple as possible. So most of the important thing is to not focus on the non-core. What's your core? Non-core would be, for example, the hostel. Do you actually need to run the hostel? Because that's your non-core activity. So look at it. These are some of the ideas that you can actually look at. And if you actually look at this, there's also the next thing, which is your innovative kind of model. Now, innovation comes of model can be being a digital university, and this is something that is quite common when you try to change whatever you do into digitalization. But please be warned when you do this, that the learning environment, especially when you use technology, is not static, it's not fixed. Meaning, if you rely on one technology for 10 years, that's not the way to go. So try to make it as mobile as possible. I think leadership is important. Without leadership support, you can't do this. And finally, and a lot of university forgets this, is actually equipping the staff, not only with skills, but also with the access and devices. If you want to do this, staff is key. Because without staff understanding this, you will not get anywhere. Another thing that we look at digitalization of universities is the role of big data in higher education. Do not underestimate the data that you have with you, especially when you want to aggregate the career data. Where does your students actually go? Look back and track back, because then you know where's your focus and your key. If it's focused on the big fours, for example, so concentrate on that. Non-traditional students in the classroom is another model that you can look. We, in our corridors, don't expect only those who finish off their secondary. It can be those who need to reskill and upskill too. So is your university prepared for this? So let's look at the diversification of income. And one way that we could look at it is, of course, you try to outsource or monetize your assets. You partner with other industries. And you could also do leasing strategies. As I said, this is not the sexy stuff, but it is the necessary stuff. At the end of the day, you have to be in the blue. If you're in the red, there's a failure somewhere. One of the things that we look at is, of course, one thing Malaysia is not very good at is to actually manage your alumni and also your endowment strategies. Now, I think Malaysia is coming into this, but this is an opportunity that a lot of universities can look at. I'd like to introduce you this university college, which I found very interesting. Tati is quite new in terms of being a university college. They were a college before. They are really set in Terengganu, but they are doing, I think, what's right, and they're beginning. One of the things that they're doing is the industry collaboration, the research cluster, and they work with the industry, meaning the machines that they have is actually with the industries. They have an endowment fund, and they even have their own subsidiaries, which they focus on, which is on petroleum and also CNC engineering. So this is something that when you look at diversification of income, you probably can look some bits of this. But please don't forget that governance is key. Higher education industry is a highly regulated industry. So you want to, be creative and innovative. One of the most important thing is your governance. Your foundation is not right, everything else will tumble. Compliance is key. And this is something I've learned while doing some transformation for some institutions. They don't comply, they are in big trouble. So compliance is key in whatever that we do for growth. But, there's so many ideas out there. Don't reinvent the wheel. I think do something that is really good. As I said, focus on your core. Some of the guides that we have is actually the Malaysian Education Higher Blueprint, or the initiatives that the ministry is trying to do. There are a lot of initiatives out there which the Ministry of Higher Education is supportive. So concentrate on those, because that will be some green lanes for you to actually transform institutions. There are a lot of soaring outwards kind of strategies. So this will probably give you some ideas that we will probably have. I'd like to introduce two higher education models that's I think is quite innovative. One is the Minerva University. It's not an online university, but the students are everywhere. And they concentrate on interdisciplinary studies. It's very rigorous. They travel around the world. So this is a model that we could look into. The next is Olin College. They concentrate basically on engineering, and students go and do projects from day one that they are in the college. So look at some of these models that are out there, and we probably, hopefully, provide you some ideas. So, the transformation process. Let me tell you, I rather build a new institution than do transformation. It's painful, right? But it is like a bitter medicine that you eventually have to take, and just face it up. What I learned from Tan Sri is roll your sleeve and actually do it. Transforming some of the institutions that was under me, I have to say, it's like a 24 hours job. And handling many stakeholders is not easy peasy. But it is something that needs to be done. So on transformation process, like David says, the most important thing is communication. As leaders, you have it in your brain. Now communicate it out, because you can't do this alone. It takes the whole institution. And furthermore, there is a process to it. There's steps. Always create urgencies that we need to change. And the message is out there. Form coalitions, as in those who support these ideas. There might be champions out there amidst your organization. Get them to support you. Create the vision, and also, communicate the vision out. Remember, a vision is actually, without action, is just hallucination. That's it. You've got the vision, you've got to do it. If not, it stays as a piece of paper. Remove all the obstacles there is. Not remove the people, I'm saying the obstacles, right? Get them, try to get them to be on board, which again is not easy. Create the short wins, the small little wins, create beliefs. Build the change into your system. Be systematic. Put KPIs. Put performance in it, and it will follow the course of action. And finally, anchor the change in your organization. But please be warned. These are in higher education institution is the people. And even though you're introducing technologies or new models, you've got to get the people on board, especially the staff, especially the academicians. So you will have this wave, which is a J curve actually, of people or stakeholders' actual kind of morale. So you will have they will go down, and if you do things right, it will go up again. This is something that I've been through, which is you are going to get actually about 20% that says, yes, it is a good idea. We're going to follow. And these are actually your champions. But be one of champions. Sometimes they go berserk. Pull them up and say, this is within the scope. They are in the middle of the institutions. There's always the skeptics. I wait and see whether this is actually happening. Or if she is going to last this. So that's the biggest group that you have, which are actually the skeptics. And 20% of when you want to do change are actually the non-believers. I don't believe in this. And usually, I don't bother with them because it takes too much of an energy. I concentrate on the other 80%. And that's where you start moving. And in higher education, I'm an academician. But do not underestimate the academician. In a lot of transformation in other organizations, it's usually top-down. The leader says, and the others follow. Look at Google. Look at a few other big companies that are doing transformation. But in higher ed, it works a different way. The faculty needs to be involved. Because the heart of any higher education institution is the faculty members. You don't get them to be on board with whatever that you want to do, there's no way that you can actually do this as painless as possible. The higher education transformation aspect of managed change, so number one, focus on the academicians. They are the ones that actually be the forefront if you want a different kind of student experience for your students. Leverage and technology, and this is something that we try to do as best as possible. Systemize things, especially the back engine of things like, exam records and stuff like that. Involve our staff. Consider the scale, big, large. Do it in phases. Support the students. Always engage in policymakers. If you want to do something out of the norm, you have to talk to the policymakers. Because remember, higher education, especially in Malaysia, is highly regulated. Strengthen leaderships. And sometimes you need to have your own champions amidst you. And you will know who is your champions, especially in board meetings and in Senate. And always maintain your focus. These are some of the issues. So, translate it into an organization. Try to actually embed it into the change that's happening. Now, I'm going to actually explain some of the stuff that I've been doing. And this comes the interesting part. But I have a caveat. So I'm a qualitative researcher, so I have to tell you my stories. This is my opinion. This is how I see things. I have a background in education, but mainly my master's and PhD is on education technology. So you know where I usually would concentrate on. I have a few higher education admin experience, and being under Tan Sri Gulf is not also easy. I had at one time be the head of exam and records, director of language center, head of he asked me to open up even kindergarten in MMU. ETM, the effective technology methodology. It's like 4 jobs at one time, and that's how you need to learn how to manage. He just throw you at the end of the swimming pool and you have to swim. So some of the administrative experience that I have actually built up what I think and how I act and what I do in my projects. I have a great mentor, and Tan Sri is a really great mentor. Any successful person will tell you that you have a great mentor. So, you know, I have to admit that. And finally, I am an outlier. And this is a study actually being done by Penang Institute. It is a think tank of from Penang state government. And they, in their report, they said that I am, you know, one of the few female vice chancellors. I am below 50 when I got the job. And actually, I've never been in an IPTA. I've never worked in a public university. So all my life has always been private university. So because of that, I'm 3%. So, which I'm not sure whether it's good or not. But I have to caveat what I've said and all my experiences, saying that I come from a different experience and background. So, the first thing besides building, what did I do? Besides building Mata School of Tourism, which was one of my first project, was actually transforming a university called UNITAR International University. Now, when we got UNITAR, it was at the split in 2013. But before that, UNITAR had a few experience. It was one of the first private university in Malaysia, along with University Multimedia. Then it went through a series of ups and downs. It changed its names to UniRazak and UMTech, and there was a lot of confusion. So with the split of the university, UniRazak went to Yayasan Pintar, and UNITAR was bought over by Equinas, Equity National. So I came in about that time. And when I came in, there was brand confusion. A lot of people until to date, what's the difference between UniRazak and UNITAR? Is that the same university? There were compliance issues with the split, the MQA, the full accreditation matters and stuff like that. Staff morale was really down. Financial issues was there. The campus was in LCS, which is Leisure Commerce Square in Petaling Jaya, and it has some mix with different offices. When we walk in front of the university, you say, where is the university? Because you see more of other, you know, emblem of office. And there was a serious confusion. And it is an ODL, online distance learning, but there was no systematic ODL going on. Systems was there since 1997. So there was a little bit of things that we got to do. Some of the major changes that we did was brand, rename. So we put the word international in it, and we began to explain to the public, this is the university in 1997. We did a tagline, wisdom of the past, inspire our future, moving forward. We did the changes of programs and focusing it solely on social sciences and no longer technology, because we saw the drop in technology or their IT programs. The second thing that we did was organization. We've got a different kind of org chart, where we do have the CEO, the chief executive officer actually handles corporate, and the vice chancellor or KE handles academic. So we had to work together hand in hand. And I thought that the organization is different, but it is interesting in a sense that I get to concentrate on what I wanted to do also. So That was a big change. Finally, we moved to the new campus back in the end of 2013. And we relocate to Kelana Jaya. Why? Because Kelana Jaya was home to us. UNITAR started 1997 in Kelana Jaya, and we wanted to go back home. So we changed the campus. So these are some of the biggest transformation that happens within 2 years we were there. So how do we innovate UNITAR from a very traditional distance learning to what it is now and the road of changes that it is going on? We began to understand the university. We know that higher education needs to change, that the students that we've got in our campus has changed. And it's about engagement. It's not about delivery. We know that UNITAR is a virtual university. We know that it has multiple locations. There's multi-modes of students. There are different types of students, part-time, full-time, modular, a lot of different types of students. And UNITAR has industry partners. So we started with that. And we started with the vision. We began to look what we wanted to do at the end of the day. But the most important thing is a vision will remain a vision if there's no translation. So we actually did a very large initiative, and it's called UNITAR Education Core, which will have the students right in the middle, right in the center of whatever that we do. And UNIC is all about the learning ecosystem. From day one, the students come in to the end. We look at Unique Learn, how learning happens in being an ODL. So we look at personalization of learning, virtual learning, and also Unique Face is all about what you do in face-to-face learning. And there was a large transformation of staff going through not only training, KPIs, and a whole lot of recognition and awards. These are some of the initiatives that we've done. Now, remember, it has to be quick wins for belief. So we launch quick wins as much as possible to get actually the staff on board. So we did, we give out devices to students. There were 9,000 students and 9,000 had devices. How did we do that in the financial constraint that we've got? I'll talk to you over tea on how we did it. But that's what we actually did. We worked with online providers to give textbooks, free textbooks, e-books to students. So these are some of the initiatives that we did. We began to change the spaces of learning. Because if you have constraint on space, teaching and learning will not change. So we began to change. So we've got different types of learning spaces in the campus. We look at service learning because we wanted the whole experience of students doing volunteer. We study the pre, during, and post volunteer. We look at certain projects. These are some examples of the projects. But this is part of the projects that I've said. Now, what the students go through is actually phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and they become better and better and better. When they say, I want to volunteer, for example, in the massive flood situation that we've got, they just hop on the bus and say that we want to volunteer. We say, okay, fine, go. They bought as many things as possible. And there was this learning curve that they found out actually some of the things that they bought were not useful. So we went on to the second bit a few months after that, which was in Pahang and Bera, and they became better at it. They study first. And that is the kind of skills that we would want the students to have. So there's a lot of hand-holding in this. So UNIC is done in phases. I went out of UNITAR at the end of 2016, and hopefully it is part of their transformation because we have institutionalized it. So the phases of UNIC implementation is actually correlates with the NMC Horizon report. So what is the impact? That there's a lot of campaigns, over campaigns. Not to the students. The students was no issue. It was to the staff, especially the academicians, to believe on what we're actually doing. So a lot of this thing called, which is a very corporate thing, called town halls. town halls over town halls and town halls, closed door session, teh tarik talks with the academicians especially. Compliance was very key, and we had champions also. So what did I learn? One, tools versus strategies of content. That's very important. Academic versus operation. Sometimes they don't want to talk to each other. You just have to put them in the room, and hopefully, because everybody would have their different opinion, and you as the leader is in the middle. And of course, change management strategies. As I said, there's always the 20% who's so gung-ho with you. There's the 60% who is kind of wait and see. So move that 60%, you get to do what you want to do. So the impact, and this is not what we said, but again, it's a article that come out at the end. We had some positive impact to the universities, namely the rise of number of students and also of our P&L. The brand value got up, and we were quite happy with the transformation that's happening to the university. So the next project, actually I didn't want to leave UNITAR because it was very comfortable already. Yeah. But this project came about to me at the end of last year, and I just got into this, well, you would say a holding company. And the idea is actually transformation of MARA institutions. And let me explain what we're going to do. So this is just a beginning of what hopefully my next 5 years going to be like, inshallah. MARA is one of the biggest quasi-government vehicle for the country. And it has been around for 50 years. And they basically concentrated on education and also entrepreneurship. But the question is, what's next for 50 years of MARA, the next 50 years? How are you going to stay relevant? So we look, and MARA has done a lot of things for the country. And I think even my PhD is from MARA. So, and some of my friends gone through their education system with MRSM and so on and so forth. And MARA has actually to date sponsored about 1.1 million students, and that created about 85% employability rate. So they have been doing something successful, but that's not enough. What's happening in the next 50 years? So we said, okay, MARA would have 3 pillars. One is the social responsibility in MARACare. The agency will remain as the agency for developmental. And the other, restructure is that we had the holding company. Now, all subsidiaries will go into MARA Corporation, including its institution. Now, MARA institutions, and this is what MARACorp represents, to develop a portfolio of world-class companies, to become market leaders, to develop world-class social enterprise, to deliver financial results to MARA, and to support MARA's strategic alignment. So we were asked to look at this. There are some of us being selected to do this job, and we are quite new in this. MARA Corporation was just established towards the middle of last year, and some of us, like me, came about middle or end and beginning of this year. So one of the things that we looked at, why do we need to look at transformation, right? One of the things that we look is, of course, on employability, on looking at MARA except for cordiality. There's a lot of assets that are around MARA. And we begin to look at what's out there and how we can leverage this. We are going to be a education sector. MARA plays a big hand in education. And it has, as Tan Sri says, about 342 institutions. This includes in all the TVET institutions in Giat MARA. We've got about 210,000 students. And this is where you begin to look at offerings. You begin to look at what is actually needed for the institutions to actually survive this transformation. The pathway, students' pathway, we can see that MARA has an end-to-end kind of offering from the TVET right up to the new university called UniMARA. Now, UniMARA is for Ivy League or professional. You've got UniKL with 23,000 students, is more of a higher TVET. You have KUPTM, which is for access of learning. So we've got all three pillars, and this is how we're going to look at the transformation of all the institutions. What is your focus? Remember, the first thing is, what's the focus? It has become so complex that you have to simplify it and also communicate it out. So, I'm about there. The transformation is beginning right now. I'm doing board meetings over board meetings, which is not easy. And we'll see how this project goes. I'm predicting it's another 10 years, I have phases until 10 years. But we're beginning this year, so we'll wait and see and hear the news in the coming 5 more years, I hope, inshallah. But when we talk about transformation, the key thing is that it takes time. You know, at the end of the day, you are not going to do transformation in the blink of the eye. No way. So, time, focus, and what I learned from Tan Sri is actually roll your sleeve and do walking by management. So literally, you got to talk to the people and getting them on board. So hopefully, you hear more news from me, inshallah, of this next transformation project. With that, I think I've got a few minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sakina, for your elaboration. Quite honestly, I feel very nervous now because I just realized the extent of her work. It is really a gigantic task that you are doing and what you have done, So I think her work, let us all pray together that she becomes successful in her job because it's very important for our country. Anyway, we'll have 3 questions and then we go for tea, then we come back for the next speaker. So, yes, sir.
I'm so impressed. I was thinking it should be made either a Vice Chancellor or Pengarah of education, higher education. But then with your talent, I think you should really be advising all the Vice Chancellors and transforming universities. Anyhow, my question is this. All universities have lecturers, professors who are, a whole generation being taught the old way and not the way that you have just presented to us. So how are we going to change this, this scenario? That's one. And secondly, you said that the jobs, 2/3 of the jobs are just not there yet for a 12-year-old. And yet, we are asking our professors and lecturers and even teachers at school to prepare the students to be useful later on, when we don't really know what they should be later on. So these are my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Is that, the first question is how do you get the lecturers to be prepared? I think, going through and talking to them, the best way is for them to experience it. So what we did in most of our training of how do you actually embrace digital technologies is getting them training and experience the digital technology. Because, like us, I'm from I studied the old way, where you go to classes and you go lecture. So how do you get someone like me to actually use the technology to actually engage with students? You can't do this by going into training over training, because nothing actually would have an impact unless you do it yourself. So what we did was we got the lecturers to be trained using technology. They had to do online courses, and that was part of their KPI. So there was the reward and recognition kind of thing, and we gave a lot of incentives to the lecturers to do that. So we made them actually learn online to experience it. That's one. Your other question is that how to get the students to be prepared, and we know that the jobs out there are not. We don't even know. And I think the most important thing when we design curriculum and design learning experiences is actually getting the skills there. the skill set, especially on adaptability, on being, the communication, is the skills that as higher education we need to prepare the students. Once you have the skill sets, the foundation, they can actually flourish out there and make changes. Because there's always upskilling and reskilling. Not only the jobs of tomorrow is not out there yet, but we must remember, some of our children are going to change job in 4 to 7 times in their career path. So because of that, the only thing that you can do is get them ready with skills, not so much in content.
Good morning, Doctor. And I think first and foremost, thank you for the very insightful sharing this now. A lot of new information, which I'm pretty sure everyone over here gained. Just before that, my name is Govinash, and I'm representing Isaac in Malaysia. So my question here is mainly regarding transformation. So whenever in the initial stages of transformation, there's always a pushback from the people who wants to transform, or you want to transform. So could you share like the challenges which you face when you want to undergo a transformation project, and how would you actually overcome this pushback which you're getting from? Thank you.
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned, there are a lot of challenges. Getting people on board. You know, you can buy things. You can actually look at, strategies of finances. But it is the people that is the most important thing. And in higher education, particularly, it's working with the academicians. But the first thing I did was actually talking to the leaders, especially your board members, the trustee, your stakeholders, your board of governance. Get them on board first, because when they support you, then you go into talking to the academicians. I didn't face any issue in transformation when it comes to students, because the students love whatever that you're trying to do, because of the nature of themselves right now, being digital natives. It is the forces that you have is actually two prongs, which to me are the leaders that you face, and also the staff themselves. So I always go into this mode by saying I am an academician too. You must remember that. At the end of the day, I'm like you. It's just that right now, let's do this together, and there's an urgency to this. So that's the most important message.
My name is Ramon. I'm from John Wiley, Malaysia. And the presentation actually recites around how higher education institutions are going through transformation, yeah? But coming from a point of view of a content provider and a higher education publisher, how could companies like us help, strengthen the transformation that's going through right now? I mean, and how soon or how can it be done? Right.
I think, when you do transformation, you need partners. You can't do this on your own, single-handedly. And as I said, don't focus on your non-core or your non-asset. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So always work with partners. So we've worked with a lot of partners. In UNITAR, we work, for example, with the content provider like Pearson and Wiley and so many more, Kota Buku, to give you the content. Because I didn't want the lecturers to concentrate on creating content. You can curate content, but not create content, because content is out there already. I wanted them to focus in the classroom engagement. So we work a lot with content providers. There's an example. Another example is that you work with people like with devices. We work with Lenovo. With the online environment, we work with Microsoft. There's a lot of partners out there that's already ready. Work with them, because if you try to reinvent the wheel, it's slower. And then the face is fizzled out already. You didn't want that. So, in today's world, collaboration is key to a lot of things. So, I hope that answers you.
Thank you, Dr. Sakini. Thanks a lot. I find your speech very impressive and your sharing, but I'm very anxious also, because I find Malaysian higher education development, we are not very particular and concerned about knowledge and the type of people we are producing. And to me, education is a public good. Just now you were telling me content of knowledge and content can be just provided by everybody. But for example, doing cooking, fire It's just the basic needs, and then we can go into all kind of applications of technologies. But basic, the fundamental, that ensure the sustainability is still what is the basic. So my question is, if we Malaysia or MARA, or we call the mega university UITM, is going to produce human capital that does not hold the basic, and these are the people who are going to, some of them who are going to be leaders in organization, institutions, and at the country level, is what we are facing in Malaysia now. What is the impact of this education as a public good? The people we produce without knowledge at a comprehensive level and called partial, and doing with their perspective. What is kind of impact what is Malaysia is enduring now? I'm very concerned and would like to know how you focus on transforming MARA at both or 3 levels at University Kuala Lumpur, where I went into the website, I find really it is good. And MARA has been very stunning in producing a middle class of Malays, and which is very successful. But when I interviewed the lots of people who have been observing and the founders of MARA, they get very concerned. The mega group of graduates produced 310,000 presently, and how are we going to sustain, and the issue of sustainability facing these people if just going after skills, or the country with the types of leaders produced, that if they do not possess a cross multicultural knowledge, they can see things in perspective, and in long term, what would be the consequence going to be faced by the Malay groups itself, the community, the society, and at large Malaysia? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for the question. First of all, I need to explain that UITM is no longer under MARA, even though it has the name MARA there. In 1980s, it has become a public university, so it's not under our preview. UniKL, yes, it is. KUPTM, yes, and the whole lot of other institutions that I've shown to you. Rightly so, and hence the reason why they put me in. Right? At the end of the day, what kind of graduates that we're actually producing? MARA has the whole end-to-end. It has the skills, TVET, lower TVET, right up to higher TVETs. The idea at that time in the Industrial Revolution was mainly producing as many people in content and to get the basics right. But right now we know that we're facing the knowledge society. So we're changing actually this transformation, and what happens actually in the different layers of institutions that we actually have. That's why I say, give me 5 years, and we hope to see some little impact in the things that we do in the MARA institutions. But I like to stress this, that there are a lot of conversations of what is the relevancy of universities, and that was the first thing that I've explained. That at the end of the day, I agree that it is a place to train the minds. It is the basic. It is the knowledge. A lot of people say, we should be producing the graduates of tomorrow. But my question is always, what is the graduates tomorrow? And hence the question the gentleman asked me on, I said, the most important thing that we could do in higher education right now is preparing the students for skills, for competencies like communications, the social skills. That has to be embedded in the learning environment. Learning does not happen in the 4 walls of the classroom. It happens everywhere. And it is up to us as leaders to actually design this. All right, I hope I answered your question.
Give another round of applause to Prof. Sakina for that very loaded and very informative talk. You really did excellent today, Sakina, as always. I take away from her talk only one thing. She kept repeating, give her 5 years. So in 5 years, either she's going to be a lecturer again, or she may become the next higher education minister or something.